And next up, I'm very pleased to reintroduce Jen Owen. Jen titles herself as co-founder of the e-NABLE volunteer community, but I got to say that's selling her short. She was the one who started this all. e-NABLE would not exist today if it wasn't for Jen and the tremendous amount of work she has done over the years. She was the first one to start blogging about this amazing process of developing an open source 3D printable prosthetic design, and all of the work that has gone into sharing the stories of the community since then. This community that is now over 20,000 people around the world in over 100 countries would not exist if it wasn't for Jen. So I just personally want to thank Jen from the bottom of my heart for helping to create something that has been tremendously fulfilling for me to be part of, and I know a lot of other people. And it's a way that 3D printing has been able to make a huge impact in a lot of people's lives. So I want to turn this over to Jen to give us a little bit of a history of that e-NABLE community. Okay, so just give me a nod when you want me to forward the slides, Jen.
All right. So I am Jen Owen, and co-founder of e-NABLE. And it happened to come about because of a couple of cosplay nerds. My friend and I decided to go to a cosplay convention in Seattle in 2011, and he made this giant metal puppet hand, which he's the same fellow who helped with Dave's costume design that you heard about previously. But we went to this cosplay convention, and it was a hit. So there were people all over who were like, how do you make this? You know, how did you do this? Can we see a tutorial? So he put it on YouTube.
Sorry, Jen.
And it just kind of just sat there and had a few views. And then a couple months later, we got an email from a carpenter in South Africa who had severed the fingers on his main hand and had been trying to make a design for a single finger out of whatever he could find, because his research was showing that it was going to cost him about $10,000 US to make one single finger. So we agreed to work with him, and I started kind of documenting their process. The carpenter sent my friend Ivan the mold of his hand, and they started collaborating over 10,000 miles apart, because the carpenter was in South Africa and we were here in the US. So they had to start using what they had in their own houses to prototype. So they were using, duct tape and paper towel tubes and just random bits that they could find. I had started blogging about it on a blog that was called Coming Up Shorthanded, that we all agreed was, it was never really meant to be shared globally. So we were kind of making a pun. But it started getting picked up in the US and then also in South Africa. And just so happened that a family with a little boy named Liam, who had been born with no fingers, saw the media and the Facebook page we had started and asked if the guys could make a full set of fingers for little Liam here. And so they did. So the puppeteer took the big metal hand and moved it down to tiny little fingers, and took it with him on a trip to South Africa so they could work together to make this hand for this little guy. After about an entire day of assembling and him getting to help make his own hand, he was able to pick up something for the first time with his right hand, and it had 4 metal fingers and no thumb, but he was able to bend his wrist and wrap it around a piece of leather roll, I think it is. When the puppeteer got back, we realized that he wasn't, that Liam was going to grow. He was 5, and they wanted to figure out how to make him new hands as he grew as quickly as possible. And at that time, 3D printing was just coming out kind of in the home-based user market, and it was also the same time that 3D printed guns were in the news. So we took advantage of that and reached out to MakerBot, who donated 2 printers, and one for us here in the US and one for South Africa. And the puppeteer started making a 3D design, and he would send it over to the carpenter, who would print it out and give it to Liam, and Liam would try it out and give feedback and tell him what hurt, what didn't hurt. And after a year of working together, and then literally in 2 months, came up with the design for the full set of fingers and the full hand. They released the design open source to the public so that nobody could patent it. We weren't going to make any money off of it. We just wanted to get it out there so that anybody with a 3D printer could make one and give it to whoever needed it, and hoped that the maker community would take it and improve it, because neither of the guys were engineers by trade. And they knew that there were other makers who were more skilled and would be able to take it and improve it. So they gave it away. And then MakerBot created a video about that hand for Liam, and it pretty much went viral, especially in the maker community. And they there were people putting comments on the video asking, I have a 3D printer, how can I help? And one of our other co-founders, John Scholl, was a professor at RIT at the time, and he was like, put your money where your mouth is. Here's a map I made. Here's a Google Plus community. Join, put your pin on the map, and then recipients can find you. And they started pouring in. The requests for hands were coming in from all over the place, from all different countries, and families were sending in drawings and pictures, and we were trying desperately to figure out how to match them. About a year after we released the design, and after about 6 months in the e-NABLE community, I realized that we needed to start sharing the stories, because they were starting to come in and we were having a lot of design improvements. So I started enablingthefuture.org. Originally it was a blog just to share the stories that were coming into the Google Plus community. And then Facebook exploded, Twitter exploded. People were sharing photos, news people were showing up at houses, kids were getting hands left and right. And then they started giving us feedback, which was really helpful, because we had all these makers who were trying to design for children, and we were finally getting some of the kids to give us feedback, which was really helpful. The designs were just exploding. I think our 2013 to 2015 years was when we got the most improvement on the design. And then the superhero hands started popping out of the community, because the maker community is a very creative group. There are a lot of cosplay people. There's a lot of artists and just super creative people, and they were realizing that they didn't have to just make simple basic hands. They had 3D printers and imaginations, and they could make them go wild. We started seeing really elaborate themed hands and super cool deliveries where Star Troopers or Star Wars groups were coming and delivering these Star Wars themed hands. We had Marvel Universe Live partnered with us, and we were able to help match the kids with the actors that were in the production, and they learned how to make their own devices. When we first started this, we really wanted to encourage the families to learn how to make these on their own so that the recipients could repair them. And so they started learning how to do that themselves. We started getting scout troops who were doing hand-a-thons and assembly lines, and we realized that young kids were able to do this, not just adults. And then we started getting teachers. Teachers were starting to bring this into their classrooms. It was really super cool to see a whole bunch of girls in STEM who found a project through e-NABLE that really inspired them. I think our first couple years, the stories we got the most were from girls in STEM who realized that they could make something to help other people. And it was growing like crazy. We ended up having, we had all the superhero hands, but then as e-NABLE started spreading out through the world, we started getting feedback from some of the countries where they didn't want the bright colored hands. They wanted the hands that would help them to blend in and not stand out, because in their culture, it was more important for them to blend in. And then we started getting e-NABLE chapters all over the place. I think we have 150 or more now in over 100 countries. And they're all taking care of their local communities, which has been very, very helpful. As you can see, from 2011 to 2015, we had a huge boom in designs and improvements. And these weren't all from engineers. These were from jewelers and jugglers and artists and teachers and students and just random people who decided to jump in. By 2020, we have more refined designs. We have gotten more feedback from adult users. It's been incredible to watch how we went from a single finger design to now there's a design that will help if you have an above elbow amputation, which we didn't have until last year. The kids started letting us know that they had no hand or no fingers for most of their lives, and many of them all of their lives. So they were cool with the hands, with the fingers, but they really wanted task-specific tools to be able to do things that would make their life easier in the moment, but didn't want to have to wear a prosthetic for the whole day. They just wanted something that they could put on that would help them do that one thing. We started getting some designs for helping with playing musical instruments, riding bicycles and scooters, specific tools for playing sports. We had started getting requests for prosthetics for animals, and our e-NABLE volunteers jumped right in. This is Lars from Germany, who I got an email from this wildlife preserve, and they asked if I could find a volunteer in Germany who could make a foot for a bird. And at that time, I didn't know that it was a giant bird. So when I got the email from Lars, who agreed, and he finally went to meet the bird, he was a little terrified at first because it was really big. But she's really nice, and she's running really fast now, and she still uses her foot. We started doing, well, I started realizing that we could do more than just hands. And I partnered with a couple other folks, and we came up with a design challenge for the global community, and especially students, to create things to help people who have lost function from stroke or nerve damage or various diseases. And most of the best designs that came in through that were from the under 18 age group, which was really, really cool. We also did a tactile learning tool design challenge to help the visually impaired and the blind. And again, the designs that came in were, the majority of them were from the under 18 age group. And it was just incredible to watch that. As the world has changed for the last few years, and now we have this global epidemic, our volunteers are now focusing hardcore on PPE for our frontline heroes. We have thousands of volunteers who are now turning their 3D printers into PPE making machines, and they are busting out, face shields and ear savers and working on 3D printable masks. There's recipients who turn teachers, who turn into designers that are helping. Here's some ear savers that people are printing. They're finding as many ways as possible to continue helping. We have been around since 2013 officially. We have over 30,000 volunteers in more than 100 countries. We've got about 15,000 or more free hands that we've donated since 2013. We have over 2,000 schools involved, and I've been scouring the internet, and I'm at around 50,000 PPE from just the e-NABLE chapters that I've been stalking on Facebook as to how many they have delivered just in the last 2 months. So we've got an incredible global community that has come from some simple geeky costume that happened 8 years ago. This is like the condensed version, which was still way too long. It's a really long story. So if you would like to see more on the process that started before e-NABLE formed, and some of really amazing photos from around the world, please join me on my extended photographic essay for e-NABLE's history and its origins on April 29th from 2 to 3 p.m. I will be sharing some of, or a lot of the same content, but way more. I have folders and folders and folders of images that I don't think I've ever shared, that I'm interested in sharing now. So please join me for that. And that's me.